Israel. I have all 21 written down, so if you so choose, I could name all 21. Including the Vatican and the European Union, all of them are coming out and saying that they are ready and willing to work with the U.S. during this Trump presidency. And a lot of these people don't even like him to begin with. I mean, I don't even like him to begin with. But they're still willing to set aside the differences and set aside the disagreements and make the most of this situation so we can all come together. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said, in the aftermath of a hard-fought and often divisive campaign, it is worth recalling and reaffirming that the unity and diversity of the United States is one of the country's greatest strengths. So if all of these other nations are willing to work with Trump, wouldn't it seem, I don't know, a little embarrassing if America wasn't even willing to work with Trump? A nation who elected him? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned 21 countries.
Yeah.
You do realize there are 198 countries, and that means that there are 170 that are saying that he's a racist bigot that we shouldn't work with.
Not necessarily. These are the 21 countries as of November 9th, which was a day after the election, that had come out, and a lot of them had come out on Twitter, and they were world leaders from these countries who had come out and said this. So that doesn't mean the other 170 so countries think he's a racist bigot. And even if they do think he's a racist bigot, that doesn't mean they're not willing to work with him. Because he is. The second thing I'd like to address is this idea of the forgotten America, or as they're also called, the middle America. There are so many people and so many Republicans who feel underrepresented by the establishment and leading Republicans. And an outsider like Trump is exactly what they wanted, because an outsider like him is providing these people their voice and their representation. So silencing Trump is going to be telling them that their opinions don't matter. It's going to be telling them that the government is going to continue running over what they believe in and what they want to fight for. And it's going to isolate them from this conversation. Like my partner was talking about, this open dialogue. What we're going to be doing is shutting them out of this open dialogue. And there are obviously people who voted for Trump because he won. And so there are more people who supported Trump than we originally thought, because for the longest time it was expected that Hillary Clinton was going to win the election. Hillary Clinton had the election in the bag. And then as we all cried on election night and watched Donald Trump win, he'd seem to beat all these odds and win. And there's this idea of these silent Trumpers, as they're called. And these are people who wanted to support Trump and vote for him because of the reasons they agreed with him, but they didn't necessarily want to come out and say, oh, I'm voting for Trump, because they didn't want to seem sexist or racist. And there are a lot of people who did vote for Trump who aren't sexist and racist people. I'm sure plenty of us have parents or grandparents who voted for Trump. And it's not necessarily meaning that they are sexist or racist people, but they saw something in Trump that they could agree with, and they saw something in Trump's policies that they could agree with. And a lot of people are saying this is what threw the polls off, is that these people who didn't want to outwardly support him for fear of sounding like this, but they're simply just people who agree with his ideals and the politics that he stands for. And yeah, there are other options, but look at what's going to happen if we overthrow him at this point. There's going to be these people, this great portion of America, which obviously equates to a great portion, who are going to feel upset and who are going to feel isolated now if we take them out of the conversation and we continue to view them as this forgotten America. I would just like to review the policy that we have set forward with the remainder of my time. So all we are saying is give Trump a chance. Unfortunately, we have elected him as president. And now, instead of fighting that, we need to join together and we need to be united, because he is going to take office in January. And all the American voting public is saying is that we need to give Trump a chance and allow him to be president. Some people still don't want him to be president. They want the Electoral College to reject him. They want Democrats to sit around and not do anything. But this is ultimately going to be bad for America. As my partner said, it's going to create a lack of open dialogue. It's going to set bad precedent for the next 4 years in the future. And it's going to take attention away from other issues, which is the main thing that is going to be a problem, is we're going to be focusing on blocking this Trump presidency, and maybe what we need to be focusing on is making our issues known and fighting for the issues that really matter. Because if we make our voice known as an American people, then maybe they'll listen to us. And again, we're just going to have to deal with Trump doing whatever Trump does if we overthrow him now. He never originally said if he would accept the election if he lost, so I don't even want to know what he would do if we overthrew him at this point. So the more we focus on these other options, the less we focus on what we can do with Trump as our president. Because if we don't allow him to do this, it's just going to keep this progress from happening. So we need to stop fighting him and decide to work with him, and work with him to bring this change and this progress, because it's the best chance we have for uniting America and the best chance we have at progress. The benefits outweigh the cost in this situation. And so with that, I would like to thank you all for your time and sit down.
The government say that we need to have discourse. What I say to you is that if your discourse is a discourse around whether it should be all Muslims who are deported from this country, or just the Muslims that come from terroristic countries, that is not a discourse that I want to have. That is not a discourse that is ever legitimate to have. That is a discourse that I would rather not have. Fuck that discourse. Bit of a direct response to these guys, first of all. Because if you think back to the Prime Minister's speech, they explicitly say, don't stop fighting, and then they go on to advocate precisely that. I think at that point we've already conceded the crux of the debate, because what we're saying is not, let's assassinate Trump. We're not saying, let's have the Electoral College reject Trump. What we're saying is when Trump comes into power, we are not going to let him do anything. When he is racist, we block that racism. We filibuster his Supreme Court appointment. We march on Trump Tower and don't let him leave the building and do actual president things. He seems to just want to hang out there anyway. In a monarchy, one man is the country. But this is America, a nation founded on the rejection of precisely that kind of oppressive absolutism. The government of the day is but a temporary servant to the people, or at least that's how it should be. They do not determine what is right and wrong. Who does decide? Not the media, not the pulpit, not the mob. Each of us alone must decide what is right and what is wrong by our own conscience. It doesn't matter if the whole country says something's wrong, is in fact right. It's your duty to yourself and to your nation to fight for what you believe is right in your heart of hearts. And when a corrupt government takes away the rights of its people, it is right, it is correct to rebel against that government. It is your duty, it is your patriotism to rebel against that rejection of a fundamental right that this nation was built upon. When your nation declared that it holds self-evident that all men are created equal, but Mike Pence says that some people are not created equal, some people should be tortured for who they were born as, we reject Mike Pence. When Trump says, I'm going to deport some people because of a race or a religion that they hold, we reject Trump as a legitimate president. We say, at that point, you are legitimate as an individual, you are legitimate as a democratic party to say, no, this is not what our country stands for. Yes, we are right to rebel against this government. And the choice then is not a choice about whether or not to give Trump a chance. The choice is how precisely do we fight Trump? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Because popularity doesn't trump individual rights. When Trump is going to appoint Supreme Court justices, when he has already appointed an Attorney General whose mission it is to disband the judgments that the courts have made with respect to bodily autonomy for women, with respect to abortions, with respect to equal access to institutions of marriage for people from the LGBT community. When that is the position that he takes, he has already decided to be a bigot. He has already decided that he will stamp on your rights. He has already betrayed the trust of the American people and the mission which America has set itself. He has already failed. He deserves no second chance. More than that, he's already caused harm. He's already caused harm because when Donald Trump says the things that he says, when he says, grab him by the pussy, when he describes the things that he's done, and still manages to be accepted as a president of the United States, what you say is that it's not the case that anybody can be president of the United States if you live up to the ideals. Anybody can be president of the United States if they're good enough to hold the office. You say that anybody, no matter how awful they are, no matter how little they give a shit about people, can still be Prime Minister of the United States. And that is something that inspires directly behaviour on the ground. Since Trump's ascendancy to the presidency, the number of hate crimes on American streets is more than double what the hate crime spike was after 9/11, right? There are people in classrooms who are being attacked for wearing hijabs. There are people who are being shouted at on the street and justified by the claim that this is our country now, didn't you see the election results? That's the direct result of allowing Trump to have legitimacy as a president, of saying it is okay to have the highest office in our nation and be this man. That's what that enables. What's our alternative? Our alternative is no. We reject his legitimacy. We say we protest Trump's actions. We say that when you march through the streets and say this is not okay, when the Democratic Party stand in Congress and say we reject you, what you offer is a safe haven. You say not everybody in the nation genuinely believes this. There are some people that will stand with you when you feel abused. There are people who are willing to defend you. And that means for so many people in that nation that would otherwise face persecution, there is something to hang on to. And we think that in and of itself is worth fighting for. In the long term, though, you're not just fighting against these one or two particular policies. What you're fighting for is American politics and the history of American politics for the next century, because you do not want to build Donald Trump's political coalition, the racism and the xenophobic campaign that he has fought, into a viable political project in America. And that's precisely what you do if, as Democrats, you work with Republicans in Congress, in the House today, right? You say, actually, you can build a campaign on that basis. You can be successful, you can get into government, and then you can wield that government power to suit your own agenda. It means that politicians will see that as a way in which they can pursue their own careers. The alternative is actually, you don't work with the House, you don't work with the Congress, you filibuster things, and the Republicans get done even less than Obama got done over his term. And that's incredibly important because it means that everybody who was involved with the Trump campaign is a failure. Everybody who was involved with the Trump campaign kills their careers by being involved in that campaign. It means that every politician who was alive when that campaign happened looks at that and says, no, that will get me fucked up. That will lose me my career. That is not a way in which I want to take my politics because I cannot win by taking that politics. That is what we have to ensure. That is how we save a century of American politics. And if you don't, well, working with that coalition, saying that coalition is acceptable, saying that we are willing to compromise on our deepest principles, basic rights of individuals, that ruins not just the Republican Party, but the Democratic Party. Because all of those people who are the core voters for Hillary in this election now see that that same party was willing to sell them out to maintain the basic idea that maybe we should have unity in some abstract concept. We say no, don't sell those people out. Defend those people or you lose them. Defend the nation, vote against Trump. Very proud to oppose.